So everyone, today we will talk about the functions and graphs today. So to do with our thicker one is the functions and graphs. And now we will talk about the order pairs and functions. So the order pairs and functions means firstly the order pairs. It has the respectively A and B. So the A is the first one and B is the second one. So if it is on the graph, then the letter and the number indicates the region where the stations are located if this is the subway station. So as we use the parable, the letter shows the horizontal position and the number of the vertical position. So in the two symbols, it has the reflective place on each graphs. So to talk about the functions, in order to make the order pairs more symbolized, to talk about the functions. Now the functions means the rule that relates two quantities so that each input value corresponds exactly to one output value. So to talk about it, this is the input value and this is the output value. And the one thing that interconnects these two input and output value is a rule. So the rule connects these kinds of two input and output. And to talk about it, the relation might be the coordinate in the plane. So the coordinates in the plane, for example, in here, this will be A and this will be B. And there should be one kind of equation that is connecting this. And sometimes there should be y is m if m is some kind of slice, the degree of the slice. Then this would be x minus a plus b. So this is just an example, and this is an example of making an equation by these kinds of a and b. So to now do it, firstly to represent the position of p, a, and b, the p, a, and b might be here, which is a and b. So the p might be here. So this is the position of the p. Now to go on to look for the marks in the quadrants. The quadrants are the things that are consisting this function. So the function is consistent with four quadrants, which is the first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, and the fourth quadrant. So there's the first one, second one, third one, and fourth one, which is firstly in here, this is the first quadrant. And this is the second. This is the second quadrant. Third quadrant, fourth quadrant, which can be second, third, fourth. So each has the marks of this because as we know, there should be plus and here should be minus. And the upper side will be plus and the below will be minus. So the marks of the AB might be A is bigger than 0 and B is bigger than 0. And A is smaller than the 0, and B is bigger than the 0. In third quadrant, A and B might be all smaller than the 0. And here, B might only be smaller than the 0. So each quadrant has these kinds of relations in the graph. So we have discovered the marks of A and B. Now to talk about the symmetrical point. The symmetrical point is some kind of relation that has standard to one kind of axis or one kind of line. So the symmetrical point has congruent values, which means that the value of this line and the value of this line is the same. So to explain more accurately, P, A, and B, which this is P, like this pink kind of face is P. So the P, A, B might have all kinds of symmetrical points, which is the symmetrical point that has a standard to the y-axis, the x-axis, and lastly, the origin. And sometimes there can be y is x and y is minus x in these kinds of points. So firstly, the x-axis. So the x-axis has a value of a and minus b, because if we have this kinds of a and b in symmetrical point to the x-axis, then there should be a minus b. So we can know when we solve this problem more quickly that the x coordinates are exactly the opposite sign, because the plus becomes minus, and which corresponds to the y-axis is that it becomes minus a and b. And when it becomes reflective to the origin, it might be minus a minus b. Next, if we become to have a symmetrical point that has standard to y and y is x, then y is x will belong to b and a, and y is minus x will belong to minus b and minus a. Now we have seen the relation of the symmetrical axis. To go on, we will now look about the graphs. So the definement of the graph is a bit simple, because it is only like representing the thing that we learned in the functions. So the graph is just to consistent with the proportional and improportional functions. So firstly, the definement of graphs is something that we made into these kinds of x-axis and the y-axis, as we learned in the class. So the definement is that it has consisted by it has been consisted by x-axis and y-axis and origin. And now to talk about the graphs. This is what we learned in class also, but to explain this one more as a review, firstly, this is the thing that constantly becomes to be increasing. And this is increasing, and suddenly it becomes to be having its degree much more smaller. Then we'll look at the third graph, which has this kind of value, and sometimes this can be seen as inverse proportion, but what I am trying to say is that this has more smaller degree in the below, but it has more steeper degree in the top place. And now to talk about here, as the time goes, the distance is becoming more increasing. However, it has like a constant value when the time passes from here. So we have looked about these kinds of types of graphs and how to interpret this. And now to talk about the direct and inverse proportion, we can know about this. Our money is really an important thing because we can buy a lot of things from these kinds of monies. And because this is so important, we should know about the direct and inverse proportion well. So firstly, to talk about the direct and proportion, this can be known as y is ax. And this can be known as yx, so xy, which is the right order if we write as xy, is a. And a is just kinds of constant value, which is called like 상수 in Korean. So we can know these two kinds of graphs. And when the x increases, the y increases in here. And if the y increases in the constant value, then the x gets to decrease in the constant value. So to talk about this more specifically, if the x increases by 1, 2, 3, and times 1 times 2 times 3, then the y also becomes times 1 times 2 times 3. And if the x becomes times 1 times 2 times 3, then the y becomes times 1 times 2 over by 1 and 1/3. So we can be positioning this x and y value like this. And this is just a challenge from the vocabulary, not the meaning of this. So we learned in the English math class. So to talk about this Cartesian plane, Cartesian coordinates, and specific vocabulary, if the Cartesian plane is in the horizontal distance, so x always comes first, and the y comes after the x coordinate. So the horizontal distance always comes first and the vertical distance comes next, because this is just the value that is decided before we decide. So we can't change this. So the order of the coordinates in the order pair is important. Now to explain about this, for example, there can be 3 and 4. So this is just the thing that we have seen before, and this is just the vocabulary for this. So if there is 3 and 4, the thing that the Cartesian plane emphasizes is that this is 3, 4, not 4, 3. So this should be represented as 3, 4, not 4, 3. So this is only the thing that we should learn in the Cartesian plane. And lastly, thank you.